Try to picture $1 billion. Now double it, 10 times, 100 times, until the numbers stop feeling real. What does that kind of money look like? If we stacked every single dollar of billionaires' wealth in cash, how high would it reach? Would it tower over skyscrapers, scrape the edge of space? Someone spent $1 million every single day, how long would it take to run out? Years? Centuries? In this video, we're putting billionaire wealth into true scale. From the tiniest billionaire with just 1 billion, climbing step by step until we reach the world's richest humans. From mountains of money to time spans longer than human lifetimes. Meet Samuel Ortiz, not a household name, not a tech titan, but someone whose net worth crosses the magical threshold of $1 billion. A billion, it sounds like an abstract, almost mythical number. For most of us, it exists only in headlines, but Samuel's fortune is real. A fortune that puts him in an elite club of just a few thousand people on Earth. Let's break it down. If Samuel's $1 billion were all in $100 bills, that's 10 million bills. You could stack them one by one, and that stack would rise to something like 1,100 meters tall, taller than the tallest skyscrapers on Earth. Just cash. Now imagine this. Every single day, Samuel spends $1 million. He jets around, invests, buys rare art, gives huge gifts. How long until the pile is gone? At $1 million a day, it takes 1,000 days. That's just under 3 years to spend $1 billion. In those 3 years, you could buy dozens of luxury homes, multiple private jets, dozens of companies, perhaps even a small country's infrastructure budget. But then, it's gone. So while $1 billion feels infinite and untouchable, in the grand ladder of billionaire scale, Samuel is at the bottom rung. His stack, his spending, his buying power, colossal for most, but modest compared to the supergiants ahead. This is our starting point, a baseline, because from here we'll scale up to $10 billion, $50 billion, $80 billion, $100 billion, until we reach the absurd heights of the ultra elite. So Samuel Ortiz gives us our first benchmark. He anchors $1 billion in something you can almost see, feel, count. And with that in mind, let's zoom up. Let's go to the next level, $10 billion. Next up, Sheryl Sandberg. You probably know her name from Facebook, or rather, Meta. She helped build one of the biggest tech empires on the planet, and for that, she's earned herself a fortune hovering around $10 billion. Now, 10 billion sounds, well, only one digit bigger than 1 billion, right? But in the world of wealth, that single zero changes everything. It's 10 times the money, a level where wealth stops being about luxury and starts bending reality. So what does 10 billion actually look like? Picture those same $100 bills again. 1 billion was a stack taller than the Burj Khalifa, 1,100 meters. Multiply that by 10, and now the tower stretches roughly 11 kilometers into the sky, higher than Mount Everest. If Sheryl decided to spend $1 million every single day, it would take 10,000 days to burn through it all. That's nearly 27 years of non-stop $1 million shopping sprees. Imagine spending $1 million today and still having more than 9 billion left tomorrow. With $10 billion, Sheryl could buy every single home in a mid-sized US city outright, purchase multiple NFL teams, and still have billions left. Fund large-scale global education or climate initiatives for decades. It's money that starts to shape systems, the kind of wealth that can build new industries or sway the direction of entire economies. And yet, in the billionaire universe, Sheryl's fortune is still just a warm-up act, because as unbelievable as 10 billion already feels, the next level doesn't just rise, it explodes. We're about to meet people whose wealth makes 10 billion look ordinary. So take a breath and step up with me to $50 billion. Now we enter a whole new weight class, the world of $50 billion. Meet Alice Walton, the only daughter of Walmart's founder. Her wealth sits around $50 billion, a number so enormous it's nearly impossible to picture without your brain short-circuiting. Let's try anyway. Remember that tower of $100 bills? At 1 billion, it stood taller than the Burj Khalifa. At 10 billion, it climbed past Mount Everest. Now at 50 billion, that cash stack would soar 55 kilometers into the sky. Higher than weather balloons, higher than the stratosphere, brushing the edge of space. It's money that literally reaches beyond Earth's breathable air. So what could you do with 50 billion? If you spent $1 million every single day, it would take 50,000 days to run out. That's about 137 years. In other words, even if Alice started spending $1 million a day when the American Civil War ended, she'd still have money left today. 50 billion is the kind of wealth that quietly moves the world. With that money, you could build 100 state-of-the-art hospitals in multiple countries, buy and restore entire cities, endow a university so heavily it never needs tuition again. But Alice's fortune isn't just sitting still, it's tied to the heartbeat of Walmart itself. Every grocery run, every back-to-school sale, every holiday shopping rush, all those moments trickle a few cents toward the empire that built this 50 billion mountain. And yet, as staggering as this sounds, Alice isn't even close to the very top, because above her are people whose fortunes stretch higher than orbit. Wealth so vast it could fund generations of spending, innovation, or pure extravagance. So as we leave Alice's 50 billion realm behind, take a moment to imagine that sky-high tower of money fading into the clouds. Next stop, the $80 billion level, not where the edge of space isn't just a metaphor, it's where the money actually reaches. Now we reach the rarefied air of $80 billion, the fortune of a man who built an empire out of cotton, fabric, and relentless speed. Meet Amancio Ortega, the Spanish billionaire behind the fashion giant Zara. He started with a single shop in Galicia and turned it into a global machine that defines how fast the world dresses. Today, that empire has given him a net worth of about $80 billion. To imagine that money physically, if Amancio stacked all his wealth in $100 bills, the pile would rise roughly 88 kilometers high, past commercial flight paths far beyond Mount Everest, piercing through the stratosphere and into the edge of space. A stack of money that could literally touch the black sky. Spending it? Let's say Amancio went wild and spent $1 million every single day. At that rate, he'd need around 80,000 days, or roughly 219 years, to finish it all. That's almost 2¼ centuries of million-dollar days. He could start spending in the year 1800 and would still be shopping right now in 2025. With $80 billion, Amancio could buy every single major clothing brand in Europe and still have billions left. Fund free college education for every student in Spain for decades. Or rebuild entire cities devastated by disasters, multiple times over. What's fascinating about Ortega is how quietly he holds this power. No flashy mansions, no obsession with headlines, just enormous silent influence. His stores cover the planet, his wealth grows as people buy simple shirts and jeans, and his name remains almost invisible. But even this mountain of cash, $80 billion, isn't the summit. Above Ortega stand the 100 billion titans whose fortunes distort markets and economies themselves. So tighten your grip, because the next leap is massive. We're about to step into the $100 billion range, where money doesn't just reach space, it starts to own it. Meet Sergey Brin, one of the two men who literally built the digital world we live in. As the co-founder of Google, Sergey helped design the algorithm that became the backbone of modern life. Every search, every map route, every YouTube video, tiny fragments of that innovation echo back to him. His personal fortune, around $100 billion. It's a number that feels alien, almost abstract. So let's turn it into something tangible. If Sergey's wealth were stacked in $100 bills, the pile would reach about 110 kilometers high, higher than the Kármán line, the recognized boundary between Earth and space. In other words, if you stacked Sergey's dollars, you'd literally be touching outer space. Now imagine he decided to spend $1 million every single day. That's $1 million gone. Every sunrise. It would take him about 100,000 days to spend it all. That's 274 years, nearly 3 full centuries of spending without running dry. What can 100 billion buy? The entire NASA budget for 2 years. Every single home in a medium-sized US city. Or if he felt generous, he could hand out $1,000 to every person in America and still have tens of billions left over. Sergey's wealth isn't sitting in vaults. It's tied up in data centers, satellites, artificial intelligence, and the invisible wires that run our digital age. It's a fortune built not from gold or oil, but from information itself. And yet, as unimaginable as $100 billion is, Sergey Brin still isn't the richest man alive, because the next level, $150 billion, belongs to the kinds of billionaires whose empires reach across continents, shaping industries, politics, and even culture. Buckle up, we're climbing again, and the view is about to get insane. Welcome to the level where money becomes power in its purest form. $150 billion. Meet Larry Ellison, the man who built Oracle and helped shape the backbone of modern computing. If data is the oil of the digital age, Ellison's fortune is a mountain of it. Refined, coded, and stored in the servers that quietly keep the world running. $150 billion. Let's visualize that. If we stacked his fortune in $100 bills, that tower would reach about 165 kilometers high. That's higher than most satellites orbiting Earth. A money tower literally out of this world. Now let's imagine spending it. Suppose Larry burned through $1 million every single day. Private islands, super yachts, companies, whatever he wanted. It would take 150,000 days, roughly 411 years, to run out 4 entire centuries of million-dollar days. That's longer than the United States has existed. With $150 billion, Larry could purchase the entire Hawaiian island chain and still have money left to develop it. Buy every single NFL, NBA, and Premier League team combined. Or give $10,000 to every person in the city of Los Angeles and still remain a multi-billionaire. Ellison actually does own his own Hawaiian island, Lanai, plus fleets of jets, yachts, and mansions around the globe. But behind the luxury is something more fascinating: control. His wealth gives him influence over how corporations use data, how governments manage security, and how global systems stay online. $150 billion means his decisions ripple through the world, quietly, efficiently, and with almost unimaginable reach. And yet, believe it or not, there are people who make this fortune look small, because above Ellison are the titans of modern wealth, the ones with $200 billion or more, whose fortunes could reshape entire nations. Next, we're crossing that line into a tier where money stops just stacking and starts rewriting reality. We've officially entered the $200 billion stratosphere, and there's no better symbol of that level of wealth than Jeff Bezos, the man who turned online shopping into the operating system of the planet. Bezos built Amazon from a garage in the 1990s. Today, it's everywhere. From the package on your doorstep to the cloud powering half the internet. And from that empire grew a fortune so vast, it starts to bend the limits of what we can even picture. $200 billion. In $100 bills, that's a stack roughly 220 kilometers tall. That's higher than the orbit of the International Space Station. If you somehow balance that tower, astronauts could practically look down at Bezos's cash from orbit. And spending it? If Jeff decided to burn $1 million every single day, he'd still need about 200,000 days. That's 547 years to run out. 5.5 centuries. He could have started spending during the Renaissance and still have billions left in 2025. With $200 billion, Bezos could buy every house in New York City, fund NASA's annual budget for a decade, or send every American a $600 check and still be richer than 99.9% of humanity. His wealth doesn't just build mansions or rockets, it builds infrastructure. Amazon Web Services powers governments, Fortune 500 companies, and small businesses alike. Blue Origin, his space company, literally aims to move humanity off Earth. And yet, here's the wild part. Even $200 billion isn't the ceiling anymore, because just above Bezos, there are people who've broken into the 250 billion range, and some pushing toward 300. Money at this level doesn't just buy things, it buys time, access, and possibility. It bends economies, it touches space. Next, we'll meet someone whose fortune has redefined luxury and style across the world, the $250 billion man himself. Our next stop is a world made of gold, glass, and designer logos. The $250 billion realm of Bernard Arnault, the French businessman behind LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Dior, Fendi, Moet, and Chandon. Every brand that whispers luxury belongs to him. His empire doesn't just sell handbags and champagne, it sells status. And that status has built him one of the largest fortunes humanity has ever seen, around $250 billion. So what does $250 billion look like? Stack it in $100 bills and the tower would rise 275 kilometers high, far beyond the orbit of the International Space Station. That's money reaching halfway to the edge of space. Spending it? Let's try the same math. $1 million every single day. It would take 250,000 days, roughly 685 years, to finish it all. That's nearly 7 centuries. Arnault could have started spending during the 1300s, while knights were still riding horses, and he'd still be buying champagne today. With $250 billion, Arnault could buy every luxury fashion house on Earth and still have billions left, fund universal clean water access for dozens of countries, or purchase entire islands for every member of the French Parliament, just for fun. Yet, his power isn't loud, it's quiet, refined, and stitched into the seams of culture. Every celebrity endorsement, red carpet, or perfume commercial feeds the same empire. His money isn't in rockets or algorithms, it's in the idea of desire itself. Bernard Arnault turned aspiration into an economy, and that economy made him a $250 But as immense as this is, we still haven't reached the true summit, because the next level belongs to the tech titans, men whose fortunes redefine what's possible for human civilization. Up next, $300 billion, where innovation meets power on a scale the world's never seen. $300 billion, a number so massive it feels like it belongs in a science fiction movie. But it's real, and it belongs to Mark Zuckerberg. The man who built Facebook in a college dorm now controls an empire that connects over half the planet. From scrolling on Instagram to sending a message on WhatsApp, there's a good chance your last interaction online passed through one of his systems. Every click, every ad, every share, it all feeds into the digital machine that made him worth $300 billion. Let's visualize it. Stack that fortune in $100 bills, and you'd have a tower about 330 kilometers high. That's roughly the distance from New York City to Boston. A literal column of cash stretching across states, beyond the atmosphere, almost to low Earth orbit. Now, imagine spending it. At $1 million every single day, it would take 300,000 days, about 821 years, to exhaust. Zuckerberg could have started spending during the Middle Ages, and his money would still be going strong today. What could $300 billion buy? Every major social media platform on Earth, and their competitors too. The annual GDP of nations like Denmark or Chile. Or lifelong healthcare for tens of millions of people. Zuckerberg's wealth is unique. It's made of attention. It's not built from products you hold, but from the time you spend looking at screens. Every second you scroll adds to his empire. And now, with Meta pouring billions into the metaverse and artificial intelligence, he's shaping how future generations will live, work, and interact. $300 billion once seemed impossible. But for Mark, it's just another checkpoint, because above him are fortunes that stretch toward $500 billion, yet numbers so big they start to look like national economies. Next, we'll meet the man whose wealth has pushed the limits of innovation, and who's aiming far beyond Earth itself. We've reached the level where wealth stops being human, where it becomes planetary. Elon Musk, the man behind Tesla, SpaceX, and a handful of companies that sound like they were ripped from a sci-fi movie, currently sits at around $400 billion in net worth. That's more than the GDP of most countries. And what makes his fortune different is how much of it is tied to the future. Cars, energy, AI, and even Mars. Let's make that number real. Stacked in $100 bills, Elon's wealth would stretch 440 kilometers into the sky. That's higher than the orbit of most satellites, higher than the International Space Station, higher than logic itself. If Elon started spending $1 million every single day, he would need 400,000 days. That's almost 1,095 years to reach zero. More than a millennium of million-dollar spending. He could have started spending during the fall of the Roman Empire, and he'd still have money left today. What could $400 billion buy? The entire stock of NASA, SpaceX, and Boeing combined, with change to spare. The power grid of several nations. Or enough solar infrastructure to give clean energy to every person in Africa. Musk's fortune isn't sitting in gold or cash. It's tied to ambition. Each dollar is a bet on the future. Reusable rockets, AI robots, self-driving cars, and maybe one day human colonies on Mars. He's not just rich, he's trying to redefine existence. But even this cosmic number, $400 billion, isn't the final stop. Because above Musk, the scale of wealth climbs into a place so absurd, it almost breaks the math. Next, we're crossing into a level very few have ever even imagined. $500 billion. The kind of fortune that doesn't just touch space, it starts owning pieces of it. $500 billion. Let that sink in for a second. $500 billion. It's not just personal wealth anymore. It's a force of nature. And standing at this peak is Elon Musk, the man whose companies stretch from the streets of Earth to the vacuum of space. Tesla revolutionized how we move. SpaceX redefined how we leave the planet. Neuralink, Starlink, XAI. Each project sounds like a page torn from a future we're still catching up to. Together, they've made Musk the richest human being in modern history. But what does $500 billion actually look like? Stacked in $100 bills, that's a tower nearly 550 kilometers high, tall enough to reach halfway to the moon's orbital path if you could keep stacking it. A column of cash piercing through the sky, out of sight past the atmosphere. And if he decided to spend $1 million every single day, it would take him 500,000 days. That's about 1,370 years to run out. More than a millennium of daily million-dollar spending. If he started in the year 650 AD, before the first castles of Europe were built, he'd still be buying rockets today. With $500 billion, Musk could fund the entire Mars colonization plan several times over, eliminate global hunger for decades, buy nearly every major car company on Earth, and still have enough left to build a new one. Yet what's most fascinating is that Musk's fortune isn't just money, it's momentum. His wealth rises and falls with innovation itself. It's tied to the dreams of humanity, the hope that technology can outpace our limits. $500 billion, one man, one lifetime, one relentless vision. But there's still one final tier, the theoretical end of this mountain, a level where wealth isn't just personal power. Once it becomes civilization shaping. Before billionaires built rockets, before tech empires ruled the internet, there was a king whose wealth made the world stop and stare. His name was Mansa Musa the First of Mali, the ruler of West Africa in the 1300s, and by every historical measure, the richest human who ever lived. In modern value, his fortune would be worth over $1 trillion. That's 12 zeros, a number so large it could shake economies even today. But what made it extraordinary wasn't just gold, it was the world he built with it. Mansa Musa ruled over an empire sitting on the richest gold mines of his era, controlling more than half of the world's gold supply. His kingdom stretched across what is now Mali, Ghana, and Niger, pulsing with trade, architecture, and scholarship. In 1324, he made his legendary pilgrimage to Mecca, and his wealth literally changed history. As he crossed Africa with tens of thousands of soldiers, courtiers, and servants, he handed out gold so freely that the value of gold collapsed for over a decade in regions he passed through. Imagine being so rich that your generosity could rewrite the global economy. In today's money, his $1 trillion fortune would stack to over 1,100 kilometers high in $100 bills, a tower that could nearly reach the moon if gravity allowed it. And if Mansa Musa spent $1 million every day, it would take him 2,740 years to run out, nearly 3 millennia. But Musa didn't hoard it. He built cities, funded mosques, and turned Timbuktu into a center of learning and art, the Silicon Valley of its time. His wealth wasn't just about power, it was about legacy. From Mansa Musa to Elon Musk, from gold to data, from Earth to Mars, wealth has changed its form, but not its impact, and that's the true scale of it all. The story of how human ambition keeps reaching higher, from the sands of Mali to the stars. From billionaires stacking cash to kings who ruled with gold, we've just traveled through centuries of unimaginable wealth. But remember, behind every number is one truth. Money might build empires, but curiosity builds understanding. If this journey blew your mind, imagine what's next. We're diving deeper into the stories that shape power, progress, and the people who redefine what's possible. So hit subscribe, join our community, and let's keep exploring the scale of the world, one unbelievable fact at a time.